Stan Heuston for the Church of Democratic Enlightenment with the 2018 Christmas message. I think this message is a test for me, which I'll explain on Facebook after Christmas. It's an argument of a sort for belief in God and Jesus, because we are getting in the press the usual expressions of concern at how Christmas without belief is a bit empty, and because Code is quite heavily Christian in the sense of believing that much that is democratic comes from the teachings of Christ. Belief in God has been a bit debatable over the last 2 millennia, so there are a couple of things to consider. One is, if God is real, what would be the effect of believing in him and Jesus? Another is, if God has created us in his image, with free will and consciousness and the brains to work out what we want to do, including be good or bad, what would we expect God to do for us? Now, if God is real, the effect of believing in him can only be to enhance our lives. We have to be happier, more satisfied personally from believing. And because Code is just starting, I'd stress that it is about belief in a future result, an enhancement of our lives that may not have happened yet, but that we believe will happen. It's about belief. Now, obviously, Christian belief makes some people, believers generally, including those we perhaps cruelly refer to as happy-clapping Christians, happier. But we're concerned with the growing number of unbelievers. And it is clear that in saying to these people, would Christian belief make you happier, we're implicitly saying, maybe you're not as happy as you might be. On that, there's no point telling people that they're not happy. People know if they're happy. But on the other hand, there is plenty of evidence that the society isn't happy. Drugs, family breakdown and violence, burgeoning mental health industry, crime, discontent with the material unfairness of capitalism, furious political partisanship. Quote, the culture is fractured, institutions are damaged, trust is broken, unquote, just a few of the items on Paul Kelly's list of gloom in the Weekend Australian, December 22/3, 2018. Greg Sheridan chimes in with Western society, though visibly going mad before our eyes, in that edition, and so on. Code believes that much of what the democracies need comes to us from the teachings and life of Jesus, the Enlightenment, but very much Jesus 1700 years earlier. Fraternity in the French Revolution was the Christian humane love or charity of St. Paul's faith, hope, charity. Marx and class warfare was wrong. Human rights turned out badly under communism. Jesus was right in that democracy and human rights rest on love, humane love, like the Enlightenment's universal humanity, and indeed, reason in the public domain also rests on love. That's according to Code, in ways Jesus didn't explain, but the Enlightenment writers may have. So Code in its community has this serious Christian basis. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, love thy neighbour, and so on. So the question about being happier in Code, especially in its community dimension, is the same question as that of Christian belief. And that goes in Code beyond just community to reason as well. Public reason needs community. A hint of that is Paul Kelly's observation that trust is broken. So in Code, Jesus' teaching provides a pretty complete democratic foundation. And I haven't even mentioned equality. Everyone is equal in the sight of God, though we have touched on the third revolutionary watchword, freedom, in relation to human free will. So the question about happiness, which looks very much the same in Code and Christianity, is whether people's life would be enhanced by a more loving and harmonious community, by the tranquility which is in the first paragraph of the US Constitution. From that, the unity and dignity of ruling society as equal democratic citizens, or, negatively put, enhanced by the end of the frustration of being supposed to rule when clearly you don't, by the end of division and mayhem. Now, of course, you can tell victims of societal ills that sympathetic community would make them happier, but you have to expect quite a few other people to say, no, I'm winning in the free enterprise economic competition, doing better than most people, so I'm happy without any need for a sense of sympathetic community with equal fellow citizens. or ruling, because I've got my bit of authority with my wealth and success, the influence and comfortable lifestyle my money can buy me and my family. So no, I'm not interested in a united ruling people or community. And I think we may have accepted that attitude implicitly for a number of decades, maybe longer, as the dominant or defining attitude of our society, until it started to become evident that subject to that attitude, the democracies were falling apart, and that we would end up under tyranny where very few people indeed would be happier. Maybe the people who say, nah, humans are happier fighting it out, the pre-civil law of the jungle is their natural societal element, they love their grievance, hostility and destructiveness. Nietzsche was right that they needed to be ruled by supermen, right to hate Christianity, are correct. Now, I'm not answering this question about greater happiness for anybody else, even though it's obvious what I think, because I think it might be a subjective individual thing for a lot of people. Greg Sheridan said in This Weekend Australian, you cannot inspire young people on the basis that this story is untrue and false, but it's full of merit. No problem. It's the untrue and false that interests us here. Lots of people believe in God and the divinity of Jesus as a matter of objective, quasi-scientific fact. True for everybody the same. In the scientific domain, true in a way that you could demonstrate its truth to anyone. But I think there's also a lot of people who might say, personally, that more sympathetic, loving community, that dignity, pride in ruling the society with my fellow democratic citizens as part of the greatest power on earth, if we believe in democracy, would enhance my life, would transformingly make me happier. And believing that is the same thing as believing in Jesus, if that all comes from the teachings of Jesus. That is without invoking the threat of fascism. So what I'm saying is that belief in Jesus and God can be more like, I believe chocolate tastes great, than I believe the earth is round. For some, maybe a great many people. You know what you feel. I thought this perspective came through in the Bible. Look into your heart for what you believe. What will make you happy? Not your head, your heart. I think we can be believers for ourselves without worrying about whether what we believe is true for anyone else. The idea that because you feel something it's true for you is fine if it doesn't affect other people. You don't need the general or reasonable opinion test. But as always with code, there's other loose ends to tie up. I'm saying that believing Jesus is the same in effect as believing in Jesus. People could respond that I'm just saying Jesus is a wise teacher, not the Son of God. They could say people believed that believing in Marx would in the future make them happier, and you, Heuston, were one such person. Yes, Marx was a wise teacher too, brilliant, but wrong, I think. And further, there is a value judgment implicit in all this that we can't overlook, that the enhancement of our lives and happiness that Jesus and code offer is for the better, making us better people and elevation to a higher human state. On the value judgment, there is a lot of support for it. The Enlightenment thinkers subscribe to it, the same people who have said that the law of the jungle was how human nature meant society to run, thought the ordinary people were a pretty dumb, weak and worthless mass. So I don't think there's a problem with the idea that democracy represents a step up. The just a wise teacher thing is also implicated here. A wise teacher who dies for his teaching, whose teaching and example will, as you believe, raise you to a higher level of humanity. Anyone who gets you to believe their teaching of that and exemplifies it in their life, how else could they teach it, must be at that higher superhuman level. So for the sceptical, it's about the distinction superhuman, yes, supernatural, no. If you believe in your heart that Jesus will make you a better, nobler person, I'm not sure what that distinction means, in effect, to you individually. But I think the bottom line in this comes back to our second question at the start. Namely, if God created us as we are, with will and minds of our own, what would we expect him and Jesus to do for us? And I can't see how the answer can be much more than just be right, give us the correct advice for improving ourselves in God's image. As free people, What else can we expect? If we are created perfect and all just put in heaven forever, we're just God's pets or toys. Jesus gives us the right advice. The Enlightenment expands on it. We take a wrong turn away from Enlightenment and Jesus with Marx. But the error of that becomes clear now. The democracies are sinking in division, elitism, absolutism, materialism, still unsocialised capitalism as the church declines. And it looks like yet again we had the answers we need from Jesus 2,000 years ago. Isn't the idea that all God can do is tell us and it's up to us if we listen? I'm not sure what else he can do. There may finally be one more thing, and it goes to my own belief in God, described in the Code title volume, the rather expedient belief that thinking God is with you enables you to do things you would not otherwise be able to do. I'll just say I don't know whether people think becoming ruling democratic citizens would be so hard that they'd need God with them to do something they couldn't otherwise do. But I think this talk is part of an argument that God is with us in this. Thanks and Merry Christmas.